if Trump and Elon barely lasted 6 months together, I think Trump and Mamdani lasting 6 months is even less likely, honestly. So I wish
although Trump and Elon did get back together.
Yeah, it seems a little tenuous, though.
It's never the same.
It's never the same. Yeah, it hasn't been the same. That's true. They do seem like distant star-crossed lovers at this point, less so than the early days of that, burning romance where things can never be better and it's the best relationship of all time. So somebody wrote into me, a Tangle reader wrote into me about the Trump Momdani meeting with a kind of, why does this matter? Like, no, this doesn't matter. Nobody thinks this matters. Take, which I thought was sort of interesting, surprised me a little bit. I feel like it really matters. I think his perception was like, this is all theater and these guys are just doing this because, because this is how they operate. They want media attention and they're both main characters and that's just how it is. And I tried to really check my biases because I obviously care about New York and I obviously, I'm paying attention to the president, whatever. But it really does feel meaningful to me that if Trump is making room in the kind of MAGA coalition and who he's being warm and welcoming to, that included in that is somebody like Zohran Mamdani. I mean, that feels to me like an important update. And, I think we touched a lot on the idea in the Tangle newsletter and the podcast about like what this says about Trump and how he operates and that he'll talk to anybody and he's willing to, negotiate with the other side. But I also feel like in retrospect, we probably didn't spend enough time on the sort of, I think he has a lot of the same ideas as I do comment from Trump and just the general reality of that, which gets like so little attention. And I ended up rereading the Washington Post editorial board take on this, which on second read, I was like, there's so much more here than maybe I gave credit to in my take. And one of the big things that I think is probably worth just stating outright is like, Trump and Mamdani both really want to centralize more control in the executive. I mean, there is something, it's like the Mamdani control the means of production ideology meeting Trump. I am the president, so therefore I can tariff the whole world and, make these big, broad, sweeping economic decisions without input from Congress or whoever else. It's pretty interesting to think that this blurring of the public and private sectors, the Trump administration's treatment of Intel, whatever, and Mamdani being like, I want to have government-run grocery stores in New York City. I mean, they kind of do rub shoulders maybe a bit more than a fiscal conservative who votes for Trump would want to admit. And I wish, in retrospect, I'd spent more time on that in my take. I'm just curious if, maybe to start, I guess my lob is, do you guys think this is a thread worth pulling at, or that's kind of, a figment of the imagination, reaching for something that's maybe not totally there in tangible terms, given how far apart they are on some other issues?
I'm going to go first because I know Camille has a couple books in his head that he's writing as we speak that he's going to lay out in front of us in response. But there's definitely a thread there. I think in and of itself, the marker of who is Trump warming up to, what are the ideas he's talking about? He's the president. He's a very active president. That's worth discussing just for its own terms without even talking about where the parallels lie. But the parallels are there. I have this take that I think Trump and now Momdani, but mostly Trump because, again, C is the president, is pushing the country to become more fiscally conservative. Like people who were liberal or are liberal and who oppose the president are looking for reasons to oppose him on anything. Tariffs are a really good example of this. His trying to broker the U.S. steel trade is a good example of this. His getting the government shares of Intel is a good example of this. I'm hearing people from the left reading a lot of the same editorials at the same time. I know you're seeing them too, are saying like the government shouldn't be involved in free enterprise like this. And it's like, oh, that's from the left now, is it? Okay. And then conservatives are like saying the same thing, saying, well, we like that the president is trying to do what he thinks is best for American manufacturing, but we do think it's inappropriate to use the tools of the federal government this way. So it looks like that there's a broader consensus that's sort of forming around opposition to some of these policies, which is a little counterintuitive, that the president is moving the country more conservative because they're going counter to him and he's the Republican. And I think Mamdani, it's a little bit more straightforward. Like, we don't know what he's going to do yet. He just got into office. Some of the ideas about government-run grocery stores and trying to have the tools of the government be involved with price setting, like with utility costs, with rent control, things that there's a lot of consensus over, but then things there's a lot of disagreement over too. So not like too out there decision policies. Those are things that are easy to oppose on an ideological ground in a straightforward way. If you're a Republican, like it's just anti-conservative, you're a Republican, easy to oppose. And I'm sure there's a lot of people in the middle that are now thinking about, well, I just made this argument with Trump. He's cozying up to Momdani in the White House. So maybe I am in opposition to this. I think there's a good deal of confusion in response to the fact, in fact, that there is a thread to pull on here, that there are parallels. I think it would be, maybe there's more for us to discuss, but I think, we're still learning about what Mamdani's policies are, and we're still learning about like the way these things actually work. In a lot of ways, we're learning about what Trump's policies are too. He's been using the executive a ton, and we don't know if that's going to shift to legislation as the courts block him. But I mean, my long-winded answer is just to get to a short version, which is, yeah, I think there's something there.
Yeah, I'd agree there's something there. And I think a lot of something there, honestly. And for all of the reasons that you have mentioned, Isaac, in other contexts and that we've discussed many times, like Trump's tendency to agree vociferously with like the last person he talks to, all of that stuff is on display. We've had many, many conversations about the parallels between populism on the left and the Bernie Sanders movement in general and the MAGA movement more broadly. And to the extent they say they have some things in common and agree on some economic things, that's a lot of what's talked about. To the extent there's something new in that regard, it's the fact that they're talking about housing and building housing as a mechanism for addressing concerns related to cost. And I think that is a very healthy development in general and good policy to the extent that Mamdani is pushing in that way. And the Trump administration is actually helping to be supportive in that regard. I think another important dimension of this, though, is the way MAGA in particular has responded to this. There doesn't appear to be a lot of upset on the left that this meeting has taken place, and that was certainly a risk that our new incoming mayor in New York seems to have avoided being too chummy. Trump, on the other hand, has seen the likes of Laura Loomer and a bunch of other kind of MAGA stalwarts openly, not so much criticizing him directly, but talking about this meeting in ways that suggest they're less than enthusiastic about the kind of olive branch and the generosity being extended there. Elise Stefanik, who is the one who essentially got flagged in the meeting, having suggested that Momdani is some sort of radical Islamist, she doubles down on her perspective immediately after, again, not rebutting Trump directly and calling him by name, but essentially continuing to assert her perspective on things. So I do think all of that is meaningful. I don't think it's merely theater. It does perhaps suggest that there might be some ways in which the new administration in New York is perhaps going to look for ways to tamp down some of the more energetic disagreements that might emerge in in favor of actually finding ways to kind of collaborate and do things together. But if past this prologue, and we certainly saw this in California with Gavin Newsom and Donald Trump getting together after the fires, and it didn't take very long for that honeymoon to be disrupted, and for Newsom to be on the assault again, and for the Trump administration to be aggravating Californians with a lot of their ICE activities.
That actually was a good segue to the other point that I wanted to make. Looking back at my writing, even from just a couple of days ago, that I wish I had said something. I wish I said that I didn't, which is that I don't think this is going to last. And I didn't really make that clear kind of in my take, but the odds that we're sitting here in 6 months and Mamdani and Trump have a relationship that feels cordial or upbeat or positive seems extremely unlikely to me. I mean, I don't think Trump's going to stop immigration enforcement in New York City, which Momdani has said, promise up and down as part of his campaign he was going to fight against. I imagine the federal funding will become a threat that Trump sort of hangs over Mamdani's head at every turn. And, I don't know if Mamdani's actually going to follow through on it, but he is, as of like a week ago, still promising that he's going to arrest Benjamin Netanyahu if he ever shows up in New York City, who, I think Trump considers a friend of the administration and is literally a friend of Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner. And if there is any semblance of a confrontation there with Netanyahu stepping foot in New York, that's going to be a big, big problem for the Mamdani-Trump relationship. I mean, there's basically just landmines everywhere. So, if Trump and Elon barely lasted 6 months together, I think Trump and Mamdani lasting 6 months is even less likely, honestly. So I wish
Trump and Elon did get back together.
Yeah, it seems a little tenuous, though.
It's never the same.
It's never the same. Yeah, it hasn't been the same. That's true. They do seem like distant star-crossed lovers at this point, less so than the early days of that, burning romance where things can never be better and it's the best relationship of all time. Speaking of Elon, actually, it turns out that a lot of the hot MAGA girls on X are in Indonesia and actually anonymous, random people on the internet. For those of you who spend less time
our jobs.
For those of you who spend less time on Twitter than maybe Ari, Kmele, and I, there is actually a big important story that happened this week related to the platform, which is Elon Musk made, in my opinion, one of the best changes that has ever come to the platform. I think it was actually pretty important. He's done a lot of stuff that I've not appreciated since taking ownership, but he made it so there is a piece of information on the account page of people's Twitter accounts that tells you what country the profile was created from. And the result was an unbelievable amount of carnage on the left and the right, actually. Many, many, many conservative right-wing MAGA accounts with, smoking hot blondes in the profile picture and I am a woman for Trump hashtag, tweeting stuff about how they're going to vote for Trump to save women's sports. They turned out to be these accounts that are just based in some far off country that is makes it very obvious that they're not American citizens voting here. Of course, it's not 100% foolproof, but quite a few of these accounts have either gone dark or blocked people who have pointed this out or haven't responded at all to the accusation that maybe they're actually just foreigners running the accounts, which I think kind of gives the game away. If you were like an American expat living in Thailand and someone called you out on this, you'd probably say so. And this is happening on the left, too. There's quite a bit of sort of like lib resistance accounts that actually turned out to be accounts operating from outside the United States. And some of the accounts are closely associated with places like, Nigeria or Zimbabwe or Saudi Arabia, where there have been known sort of like bot dragnet operations happening where people are sort of trying to shape the narrative with social media posts from abroad. Pretty interesting. I mean, I think maybe we all underestimated the degree to which some of these actors were kind of influencing the discourse. B, it makes a lot of sense because holy shit, X is a cesspool. And like I'm using it less and less because it's so polluted with partisan hackery. But I'm curious what you guys thought when you saw some of this stuff coming down the pike. And also, does it make you rethink any of like the Russian interference, social media campaign stuff that we heard about in 2016? Like, to me, that's kind of where my mind went was, oh, this actually feels meaningful. And a lot of people dismiss the Russian bot activity in 2016 as like, oh, it was just, a few dozen Facebook accounts who don't matter and whatever else. But I don't know. This makes me wonder if maybe we knew even less about what was actually happening then, given how much was sort of under the hood once this change came out and how much carnage there was. Maybe this is a bigger part of our politics than we actually understand.
I mean, it's interesting
that's
to
actually,
frame it that way.
Yeah, it's an excellent question. And I thought about that, but certainly as you ask it and detail it, we need to take a closer look at the data and try to figure out whether or not there's any indication that things have gotten materially worse. I mean, certainly the conversation at that time was it's Russian influence campaign. They are spending money. They're setting up these particular agents. They have their bot farms that they were operating in an attempt to try and influence the election. Has it gotten materially worse since then? Obviously, a lot of these actors, as you mentioned, some of those places, Indonesia, UAE, Nigeria, those places are not Russia. Who is funding those operations? Is it the same people? Do they have the same objectives? We do know that a lot of that foreign influence stuff that was taking place in the 2015, 2016 window actually seemed to be geared towards cultivating energetic responses around divisive issues. And in a lot of respects, the operation does seem to kind of parallel that with these MAGA accounts, a lot of the anti-Israel accounts and pro-Gaza accounts similarly exposed. I would agree. I think having more information about this is good, and people being able to recognize. And it's also just heartening to see people actually looking and then posting the screen caps. And it's not just journalists. Like I see regular people doing exactly the same thing. I think that's wonderful. My hope is that we get greater transparency as well. We've talked about Fuentes for a while and other kind of nefarious actors who have what seems to be a great deal of prominence on the social media platforms now. But how much of that engagement is real? We don't actually know. There isn't a great deal of transparency. There used to be more when we had more direct access to the Twitter API, which I believe was somewhat modified before Elon even took over. And there's been less transparency up until this point. So I think that's a good thing in general, but I do want to know how much of Nick Fuentes' influence is real. It seems to be the case that he is getting an exceptionally high rate of engagement when he posts content to X, engagement that by some counts appears to be even more dramatic and quick and fast than the engagement that Elon or Trump or Barack Obama get when they post something to Twitter. And what I mean by that is they put a post up and within minutes, there are thousands of people who have liked and retweeted something. It's an exceptionally unusual thing to see happen for anyone, let alone someone who is kind of pushing malevolent ideas like that. If it's real, then it's concerning. If it's not real, it's concerning in a different sort of way. And again, information like this is valuable, but it does require us to actually get some more detail so that we can develop some informed perspectives on what's happening.
Really got Fuentes on the brain still since we talked about him last. He's really wormed his way in there.
Not inconsequential. We were talking about this before it became the kind of central issue for
Yeah.
Republicans.
That's true. I don't know. I don't know if it's maybe it's something where he and his network are subjected to some of the same like exposed accounts as being not America based. I don't think he's ground zero for it. I don't think you're saying that he was, but it's certainly something that we have to continue to look at. I know that the way that we, or at least I understood the Russian interference campaign story of 2016 wasn't that there was proven collusion with the president, and it wasn't that it was all a hoax and nothing burger. It was that we didn't see any direct operation between the Trump campaign and Russia. Like, that was overstated to the point where it was unreal, and you could even legitimately use the word lie for some people. But the idea that Russia did not have an interest in trying to sow disinformation in that election is not what we should have learned from that. In fact, the lesson that I think I took away was, a lot of people, Russia included, see an opportunity in our media ecosystem to try to make a buck by fanning flames, by sowing discontent, by stirring shit up. And that market is not dominated by Russia. It is something where they have an interest, and others will too. So even though we can say there's some Northern African or Middle Eastern countries, or even South Asian countries, East Asian, where there may be Russian ties, it's sort of like the discussion we had with France last week. Like, even though we can draw the connections, it's probably not the case that it's all part of the same disinformation campaign. It's probably different actors all seeing the same opportunity. And honestly, I cannot imagine a better advertisement for Tangle than, hey, people online are trying to mislead you. They're trying to take advantage of the fact that you have distrust in the media and your politicians, and they're selling you a bill of goods. They come from now we know where, but previously God knows where. They're trying to take advantage of your rage and weaponize it against you. Don't trust what you read on social media just because it confirms your priors. Come check out readtango.com, blah, blah, blah. Like, I think it's just something that supports what we're trying to do really well, and supports what, a lot of media organizations are trying to do, of just follow things to the source and have conversations with one another. It's a good feature from Elon, and I hope that it progresses to even more skepticism from what these accounts are posting.
Hey guys, thanks for watching. And if you want some more, don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel. And you can also go listen to our podcast, Suspension of the Rules, by finding the Tangle News podcast feed. Just look up Tangle anywhere you listen to podcasts, or go to our website, readtangle.com. All right, thanks. Peace.